Rebellious Studio presents the Mind Body Podcast with your host, Maria Angelova. Hey, Rebels, and welcome to the Mind Body Podcast, your rebellious podcast with me, your host, Maria, where it is all about a strong body, calm mind, healing, and fully living. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome with me today my colleague and friend, Margaret Ghielmetti. How are you doing? See, I slaughtered the last name, Ghielmetti. I told
Maria,
you.
it is a really tough name. My maiden name was Davis. Life was a lot easier. And then I fell in love with someone with this last name. So Ghielmetti like spaghetti.
Right, there we go. So spaghetti, think of spaghetti. And we were joking about that as we started, but anyways. Margaret, a pleasure to have you here. I had the pleasure of connecting with Margaret through Authority magazine. And I was really taken, Margaret, by your authentic voice, by your sense of humor, by really your high vibes and spirit. You know, it's very refreshing to get that kind of energy.
Well, right back at you, Maria. I really felt the same thing. And having just read your book, which is amazing, Mind and Body, I recommend it to everyone because it's really an inspiration on how to live with a lot more life in it. So yeah, I feel like it's a meeting of the minds and the hearts for us.
Yes, I love it. So I'm so excited to have you on air. And we're going to start, for those of you who have not met you yet, who have not had the privilege of meeting you yet, we'll start by you telling us 3 words that describe who Margaret is and giving us a little bit of a backstory of each word.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I know it's like one little phrase. I'm really fiercely interested in other people. That's something that I really love connecting with other people and getting to know them. I have been told I'm a funny person, but on kind of a under the radar level. So some people takes it, sometimes it doesn't kick in right away, but I do love to lighten up life with humor. And I'm creative. I love to take nothing and create something wonderful from it. And I always have, even since I was a little kid.
Yeah. And, just off top of what you're saying, creating, I've never really thought about life until I got into the mindset stuff about creation and how we have the opportunity to create the life that we want, the experience that we want. And it's such a powerful choice, I would say, to create and thrive while creating. And Margaret, you have a fascinating story. And as somebody fellow who loves to travel and who is on a high from a recent trip, let's really talk about travel and the joy and the transformational power of travel in your life, in your personal experience. What do you tell to somebody who says, I don't travel?
Wow. To the person who says they don't want to travel, I tell them, please don't travel. Because I worked for the Italian travel office for many, many years. And people would say, oh, I have to be able to wear shorts into St. Peter's. And I would say, well, that would be disrespectful. Well, I'm not going to go then. It's like, well, please go someplace else where you want to go. And so to me, travel is a privilege and has been a lifelong passion of mine. So people who don't want to travel, I get it, stay close to home. One of my dear, three brothers, his jam is playing guitar and model railroad with his grandkids. I'm like, you do that, it's like you do you. But for me, travel has always been, my mom would say that even as a little girl, I had 1 foot planted in my hometown and 1 foot out in the world, which I agree is kind of an odd image, not for someone like you who works with people and their physicality. But I have always just found other people and their lives fascinating, close to home, and then living on 4 continents and visiting 50 countries. I just can't get enough of it. I think the world is a really amazing place. I would wish it for anyone, that privilege. But if they don't want to travel, well, do what you love to do.
What has travel done for you, having lived in so many different cultures and so many different places, so many different customs, beliefs, foods, languages?
All of that. I will say it's a constant joy and a constant discovery, but I would also say it's been living in different countries, and Maria, you relate to this profoundly, I'm sure. It's not easy. to move countries. It's not easy to move even cities. And we would move every couple of years for my husband's career in the hotel industry. And so I got very, very good at creating a new life, as you say, thriving in many, many different places. And I am glad for that. And I'm proud of that. And I learned a lot from each place we lived. There were some lessons so profound that I would never have learned if I hadn't lived there. So I'm very grateful. But I really did struggle at the beginning because my initial moving overseas meant giving up my professional career. And I thought, I am going to be the best expatriate ever. I've got this. I'm well traveled. I speak languages. I'll be fine. I was not fine because I did not know how to ask for help. So if I look at the whole arc of my life, what travel has taught me is we're not alone. Ask for help. Even if it's as simple as asking someone, where's the best coffee in your neighborhood? Make connections is what I needed to learn. The biggest lesson I learned probably as a traveler and an expatriate and now a repatriate.
Yeah. Very much can relate to what you said, and you started by saying one of the things about you is you love to connect to people. That's one of my favorite things to do, and I joke with my friends because I'm like, I don't want to just know, like, this is my title, like I want to know your darkest secrets. So, we joke about that. Like, I want to know, like, who are you at your core? What gets you excited? What gets you fired? What gets you upset? Like, who is that person inside you? And I'll tell you, from my recent trip, I would just go and talk to anybody. And when I was a kid, my family used to make fun of me because I would go and I'll be like, hi, my name is Maria. Would you like to be my friend and play? And an hour later, I would have a new best friend. And every time we would go to, to the beach, my family would be like, did you make a new best friend yet? And I never failed. I always had a new best friend. And even to this day, like when we were on vacation, I would just strike, while waiting for my coffee, I'll be like, so how's your day today? And then I would start talking, and I totally enjoy meeting new people. And I'll tell you, as somebody who is an immigrant in this country, right? I think you get a very different experience to what you said, moving to a different country. And in the beginning, for me, was like, oh, they don't know how to do this because that's not how it is done. And then you realize, well, no, that's how they do it. And you're in their country. So that's how it is that you need to do it, right? But it takes a second to go through that experience. And as there's criticism of different cultures, or the example that you say, why can I not wear shorts, or why is the food not cooked like that, or why is there not a McDonald's somewhere else, right? It's like, if you go with those expectations and expect everything to be the same as what you're missing on that entire experience that can help you really uncover so much of who you are.
Totally agree. I mean, that's what I love best about travel, is being just what you're saying, all of the discoveries, many times things I don't expect. And those moments of, as you say, making acquaintances or friends with people. I still do that now in a cocktail party because I'm a social person, but at heart, I'm an introvert. So I really understand the person standing quietly in the corner. So I often will approach that person and say, hi, I'm meeting people I don't know. Will you please talk to me? It's a version of that. Will you please be my friend? That I remember from being a really shy little kid, because I think if we're not connecting with other humans, I don't know, that's what it's all about for me. That's why I do any kind of art. Whenever I tell a story, in my solo show, in my book, it's all about how can I help people to know that they're not alone, that there's help available, and that they can live not a better life, but I'm always hoping for all of us to live a more genuine life, who we really are. So I loved in your book when you say, one day I will have my fitness studio. And I always was like, well, one day, in my case, I'll write my book, but it was more, one day I will be my genuine self. And that's what I'm always hoping to share with people, is that possibility is there. You use the word choice. That's my favorite word. It's so irritating sometimes where it's like, oh, Margaret, you have a choice here. This is
right. It's your choice.
Yes. Oh, shoot, it's my choice. Everything, literally. So yeah, I agree. I love those connections.
Yeah. And you know, the one thing that you mentioned when we did the interview, our first interview, is you talked about that human connection and putting technology away. And I'll tell you, I have become really anti-technology person, because, you know, even think about taking a long flight. What did we used to do in the past? There was no TV, there was no phone. You had to talk to the person next to you. Now, granted, sometimes you didn't want to talk next to the person next to you, right? But you kind of had to interact with somebody on a long flight. Now you don't have to, and people come in with their earphones and they don't even say hello, right?
It's true.
So you
It's
can
true.
see how that's changing the dynamic of our existence. And I think that's why mental health has become such an issue, because we have lost that social interaction, which is so key for us being humans.
Well, I agree. I'm glad to hear a younger person say that, because I really know that at my age, at 63, it's like, oh boy, I'm at risk of sounding like a great grandpa. Oh, put your phones away. But I totally agree with you. You know, I just like, here we are, humans on the planet together for this brief instant.
Yeah.
There are many times as an introvert, though, I will bury myself in a book on a flight. I'll be honest with you. I might just like go right in the book.
And that's okay. But it's like, before, there used to be a chance that you might interact. And now that chance is just, you sit at the airport. What did you used to do before while waiting to board? You interact with somebody. Now everybody is like head down, and it just takes away from us. And having been abroad where they don't use technology as much, I will tell you a funny story. I was actually, one of the deals we made with my daughter was, when we go there, we will be off social media, technology. I said, I'm not going to check email, right? It's going to be a technology detox. And I thought, well, surely they're not going to have excellent Wi-Fi everywhere. Margaret, there was Wi-Fi everywhere. And I was like, what is this Wi-Fi everywhere?
It's so true. It really, back to your word of choice, it's really gets down to be a choice. And I agree with you. I think we're missing the human connection. I also really find it sad that people aren't literally occasionally looking out the window. You know, it's like right now in Chicago, we have a very short, a couple of very short, pretty times of the year. And then in winter, it's awful. No one moves here for the weather. But springtime, things are just exploding. And it makes me a little sad when I feel like, oh my gosh, people are missing whole chunks of what like makes life so exciting to me. So, I mean, I love social media, but I do admire very much your commitment to putting it up for the trip as best you could, despite the great Wi-Fi.
To what you said, think about it. You're missing the great weather. How many other things are you missing because your head is buried down and because you have to respond to that next email? I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I don't know if anybody ever stays on top of their emails and never has any emails to respond. So if that's your goal to enjoy life after you have caught up on all of your emails, then good luck with that. But
Exactly.
you know, sometimes you have to prioritize and decide what's more important.
Right.
So Margaret, you have a book with a very catchy title. Let's hear it.
It's Bravish, a memoir of a recovering perfectionist.
I love
that. I like to stress the recovering, and I know that you get it. I read about, you know, when you would bring home a B and it was like, why couldn't that be an A? I had the same thing. And so I definitely have lived a lot of my life based on that. It has to be perfect. And luckily by now, I really do believe that perfect is the enemy of the good enough. Some days it's like good enough is great. It's great.
What has been your experience as you has, and I think talking about perfectionism is a great topic, because I think there is a lot of perfectionism out there, and I see it in the way people want to move and the way they're impatient with their bodies and the way they get angry with their body. And I have to remind them with like, be grateful for what your body can do rather than beat it for what it cannot do. And you can always tell somebody's personality by the way they approach their movement. And as somebody, like you said, who is a recovering perfectionist, what has your experience been with letting go of having to be perfect? Maybe even how travel has helped you, because like I will tell you, for me, it used to be anxiety attacks, lack of sleep, you know, not so good things. by constantly having to do the best, and also paralysis by analysis, right? Overanalyzing of what has been your experience, and what do you tell to somebody who is trying to let go? Because that's also, that's also a journey in itself.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, and thank you for understanding me. One of the things I wanted to share in the book is the journey around letting go of perfectionism. For me, a lot of the perfectionism showed up as people pleasing. But what's helped me is when I finally got to a point in my life when I realized, oh, I'm getting an emotional payoff from all of these things. So every time I was the perfect spouse, the perfect corporate wife, the perfect worker, the perfect expatriate, someone would pat me on the back and, oh, you're a hero. Oh, and I realized, that is really keeping me from living the life I want to live. And I had to start to let go of the emotional payoffs that I used to think kept me safe. So as a little child, if I was really, really good in school, that was a good thing. I mean, I was beloved for that. And I was a very compliant person. And I still love school and learning, and I'm still a pretty compliant person. But in terms of being rebellious, I have to move past, as you say, my comfort zone of, oh, I know I can get a very easy emotional payoff if I do something perfectly. Someone's going to appreciate it, but at what cost? So that's really been the journey for me. I will say that to answer your question of how travel has impacted that, as you know, it's super helpful because things go wrong all the time.
And they're out of your control, right?
Out of my control completely. And I will say that's what a lot of people really in my early storytelling love to hear, were my stories of all the things that went wrong as a traveler, because they're hilarious, and as a control freak, I thought, I always thought, I've got this. I make this hand, this is my hand gesture. I've got it. I rarely have it. And I mean, things go really wrong. And to me, it just seems funny. It just seems human now, but it helped me to get over the sense of, oh no, I've done something wrong. It's like, I've done something human.
Yeah.
And I've made someone laugh, and I pretty much by now always make myself laugh. So I'm really grateful travel does challenge my comfort zone, living other places. But I also think that's accessible for people here. I do think, though, it's a matter of, are we willing to look at what are old stories in our lives, old messages? Are we willing to give up the payoff of fulfilling those old stories in order to have something that we want more now? Because it's hard sometimes, and people will say, oh, you used to be so, it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, I know. It's like, oh, you used to be so much more. Yeah, I'm sorry, I know. That's a disappointment to some people.
Well, and I think what you're really talking about, Margaret, is, like you said, the finding your voice, finding your authenticity. And when you do that, you learn to start setting up boundaries. And sometimes the people around you are not so keen on those boundaries, right? If you're especially people pleaser, and you go from yes, yes, yes to no, 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 people don't know what to do with that.
So true.
It's uncomfortable for them. I would guess it's uncomfortable for you, saying that from personal experience, because it takes a second to adapt to that. But how has your life changed since you have found your own voice?
Oh, I feel really grateful for that. And I want to give a shout out to my husband, because he's really the one who helped me at a certain point. We do a motto every year on January 1st, and it's not a resolution because I don't want to break that after 5 seconds, but just some words to live by. And for a long time, when I was caretaking my elderly parents, it was be here now, be here now. I really was determined to try to stay in the moment as opposed to worrying too much and trying to fix stuff. And then one year my husband said, Margaret, I'm sorry, but this is a year it has to be me first, meaning you, Margaret, first. And I thought, oh, that kind of took me by surprise, not because he isn't a wonderful person, he is, but that felt pretty scary to me as a people pleaser. And then my husband, Patrick, who is a great guy, said, I know I'm going to regret saying this because I know what that's going to mean. And he does tease me about it now every year. He's like, I thought that was for 1 year only. How can't we get back to Patrick first? It's like, yeah, no, sorry, the genie's out of the bottle. But after that year, I mean, it was really cumulative, building up the sense of I'm not living my life, my genuine life. And that really did help tip me over. And I started, the storytelling. And the more I told stories, I saw audiences really wanted something more vulnerable. They didn't just want travel, ha ha ha. They wanted to hear. So I started to share about infertility and how difficult marriage is, and my parents at the end of their life. And I could feel the audience. I can feel the beating heart of the audience. And that really emboldened me to do a solo show about what I call growing up with my mom in adulthood. And then eventually my book, which started out really, I won't get into politics, but a certain election where I felt we were being told that the other is bad. And I thought, no, that's not my experience. Let me write about my travel. And as I wrote about my travel, it really became clear I was also writing about my emotional journey to be reconnected to my genuine voice and expression. And so now I still struggle, honestly. I mean, I will, under duress, I will kind of scurry back into old behaviors like, oh, I can be a people pleaser, and then I will be loved and everything will be fine. And then I have to kind of puff myself up and go, okay, you can do that, or take a breath.
I think once you have tasted what it is like to be authentic, it's no longer, the comfort box is no longer so comfortable, right? Because then you experience different type of discomforts than before. And you realize that doesn't really feel so good, right? For me. And I think that's very important to know when we feel in alignment with ourselves. I was talking to a client this week and he was sharing something and I said, so does this really feel in alignment with you? And he goes, no.
Wow.
But you could tell. And the more self-aware you become, the more aware you become of what feels good to you and what doesn't. There's no right or wrong, right? Something that feels good to you might not feel good to me and vice versa. But and staying true to that, because it's not always comfortable. You will get judged, you hear, jabs and right. Mm-hmm. And it's a thing to stay true to yourself, but it's empowering. And I think to what you also mentioned, feeling the heartbeat of the audience, isn't that powerful to have that kind of connection to a whole room full of people? And I think you nailed it. You're being human. You're not sharing a social media perfect life. You're sharing, this is really what brought me to this point of my life. And it hasn't been always so pretty.
Right. I really want people to know that. Because I will say even my oldest friends, when they read my book, they said, oh, if we had known that you were so lonely and so bewildered, we really would have been there to support you. And I said, that's all on me. I mean, I'm not blaming myself, but I said, I needed to learn that I'm not alone. I needed to learn to ask for help. There's a lot of stuff that I needed to learn. That's no one else but me. So now that I feel more connected and, as you say, more genuine, I want to stay in that comfort zone, because I feel that we are given this one life. There's a wonderful poem by Mary Oliver, and one of the lines is, what will you do with this one wild, precious life? Yeah. And I get shivers just saying that word, her words, because the clock is definitely ticking. I mean, I really, really love it when people can come into a fuller sense of who they genuinely are. And it's not, as you say, Maria, it's not always easy, but then it's that we don't go back. We don't go 100% back. Maybe, I feel like the door opens, it may close again, but it never closes all the way.
2 steps forward, 1 step back,
exactly.
2 steps forward. Yeah. It's an experience. And to your point, I do think everything in our life happens for us for a reason. And I've had those experiences where I didn't speak up, and that there was a lesson in that, right? What was my lesson? So yeah, it's on us. And like I said, sometimes it's not so easy to look into the mirror and see what's out there.
So true.
Well, Margaret, we cannot live air without you telling me your definition of rebellious.
Oh, well, that was very challenging to me, because as I say, such a kind of a compliant person. So the word rebellious, but I really loved your definition of moving past our comfort zone and then owning it. That feels to me, and particularly I would say, I've been rebellious with my old self, saying, as we've been talking, okay, that no longer works for me. I'm sorry, but you know, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. It's like, I really need to choose to do things differently. So that is a rebellion against, I talk a lot in my book about the family handbook, some of the rules that I grew up with, and they're good rules, except in excess, they kept me very small. So rebelling against that. And I would say at my age, as someone who came into creative expression in her 50s, I do definitely rebel against this notion that, wow, at 63, you should be slowing down. You should be XYZ. You should be, it's like, you know what? Don't tell me what to do. So
No,
I definitely,
you're just starting to thrive. Come on now.
exactly. Exactly. But even for people, you know, I don't care if someone's 100 years old. It's never too late. And so I feel that there is some societal pressure that I rebel against. You know, when I'm standing in line to tell a story and people are like, oh, are you here to see your granddaughter? It's like, no, I'm here to get up on that stage. And I feel that that's an act of showing people, you know, live your life, whatever that means for you.
And you know what? You are inspiring so many others who,
Oh.
you know, are maybe hearing that. Yeah, because I think by us being brave and into stepping who we are, we do give permission almost to others to say, well, she's doing it, so I can't die, right? It gives you that little opportunity of hope, glimpse of hope and light to say, I can do this too. So stay rebellious, Margaret. That's what I say.
Thank you,
And
Maria.
I know you gave us a favorite quote. Do you want to stick with the same quote, or do you want to share another inspirational quote or favorite quote with our audience?
Oh gosh. Well, the quote, I do love that Mary Oliver poem, and I'd be happy to send that to you if you want to share with your listeners. She's got a couple of other amazingly inspiring quotes. But what I had in my taped to my computer for years was, a ship in port is safe, but that's not what ships are made for. And that really kept me going and exploring when I did have moments where I wanted to kind of like get a little smaller. It's like, wow, if I have the privilege and the opportunity to be in the world in a way that is satisfying for me, brings me joy, and I hope can be of service to other people, keep sailing, you know, keep sailing. Don't just like slide back into port. I mean, I have my moments. I have my moments when I curl up with a blanket.
Yeah. I
So
always say
that's
it's
another
okay to have a day with, you know, in bed with ice cream and, you know, binge watching Netflix, but make it a day. Don't make it like a lifetime of that, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Right.
Awesome. Well, Margaret, do tell people where they can find you and follow your journey.
Thank you very much for saying that. Well, my website is my first and last name, so margaretghielmetti.com. And there's a link there to my book. I would be very grateful to anyone who chooses to buy the paperback. Let me know you've done it. I will email you or mail you a dedication to put inside the paperback book, because I really love to have the physical books in the world. I have questions in the back for book groups or for discussions. And then, you know, please feel free to donate it onto your little free library or whatever you do with books. And I really love to be in touch with people. I love to help people tell their stories. I do a lot of coaching around that. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, my email is margaret@margaretghielmetti.com. So it's my crazy last name, my crazy first name.
We'll share it so that people can just copy and paste or click instead of having to spell it out. That always helps out. Yes.
Right.
Well, Margaret, it is such a joy and pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for staying authentic and true to yourself and inspiring me, for sure. I'm totally, you know, I started reading your book. I look forward to reading it. It's really inspirational to see people who embrace the world as their shell, as I say. So thank you.
Well, Maria, I want to thank you right back, because I felt a connection with us from the very beginning. And I love what you are bringing to the world. So rock on. And to all your listeners, rock on too.
Thank you so much. With all of that, I thank you all for listening. Do let us know if you have any questions. And as you know, make it a rebellious day. See you next time. Thanks, Margaret. Can't get enough of those rebellious conversations? Do make sure you subscribe, like, and share with your friends.